Here are 5 of history's darkest solutions to simple problems. You're a Victorian mother in 1850, and you have a problem. Your baby won't stop crying. It's been hours. You're exhausted. Your husband is complaining. The neighbors are giving you dirty looks. You need this child to shut up and go to sleep. What do? Well, according to the pharmacists of the era, you march down to your local drugstore and buy a bottle of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup, which was basically liquid morphine marketed for infants. The label promised to relieve teething pain, colic, and fussiness. What it didn't mention prominently was that the active ingredient was morphine sulfate. Lots of it. You'd put a few drops on the baby's gums or mix it into their milk, and boom, instant quiet. The baby would go completely limp and sleep for hours. Problem solved, except your infant is now a morphine addict before they can even walk. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup wasn't alone. There was also Stickney and Poor's Paregoric, Cop's Baby Friend, and Street's Infant Quietness. That last one wasn't even trying to hide what it did. The Victorian era had dozens of these soothing syrups, and they all had the same basic formula: opium, morphine, or heroin mixed with alcohol and sugar to make it taste good. Parents would dose their babies multiple times a day without realizing they were slowly poisoning them. Thousands of infants died from overdoses. Thousands more developed severe addiction and went through agonizing withdrawal when the medicine ran out. Doctors started calling these products baby killers, but they remained popular because they worked. Your baby stops crying when they're unconscious from opioids. That's just science. The practice didn't fully stop until the early 1900s, when regulations finally caught up. But for decades, the Victorian solution to a fussy baby was essentially, have you tried drugging them into a coma? Parenting advice has improved significantly since then. Let's move on to a different kind of headache remedy. You're living basically any time before the 1900s, and you've got a splitting headache. Maybe it's a migraine. Maybe you hit your head. Maybe you're just stressed because medieval life is terrible. Whatever the cause, your head is pounding and you want relief. So you go to the local healer and they say, I know exactly what you need. Then they pull out a drill. This is trepanation, the ancient practice of drilling, scraping, or cutting a hole into someone's skull. And it's one of the oldest surgical procedures in human history. Archaeological evidence shows that people were doing this as far back as 7,000 years ago. The theory was that drilling a hole in your head would release evil spirits, bad humors, or built-up pressure that was causing your headache. It's the medical equivalent of, have you tried turning it off and on again? Except instead of rebooting your computer, they're making a hole in your skull with Stone Age tools. The procedure went like this. You'd lie down, probably get very drunk if you were lucky, and the healer would use a sharpened stone, bone tool, or later a metal drill called a trephine to carefully bore through your skull. No anesthesia, no sterilization, just raw determination and screaming. They'd drill until they hit the soft brain tissue underneath, creating a hole anywhere from a small circle to several inches across. Then they'd either leave it open or cover it with a piece of metal or animal skin. Here's the terrifying part. Many people survived. We found ancient skulls with multiple trepanation holes that show signs of healing, meaning these people had their heads drilled multiple times and lived to complain about their next headache. Some historians think trepanation might have actually helped in cases of skull fractures or brain swelling by relieving pressure. But most of the time, people were drilling holes in perfectly healthy skulls because someone had a migraine, and medieval medicine was basically just vibes and guesswork. The practice continued well into the Renaissance. There are detailed medical texts describing the proper way to drill into someone's brain. The tools got more sophisticated, but the basic concept remained. Head hurt? Make whole. Even today, there are a few people who practice self-trepanation for spiritual or consciousness-expanding reasons, which is absolutely unhinged. The modern solution to headaches is ibuprofen. The ancient solution was power tools to the brain. Speaking of terrible beauty advice, let's talk about Victorian skincare. You're a fashionable woman in the 1800s, and you have a problem. You want pale, luminous skin. Tanned skin means you work outdoors like a peasant, and you're trying to look wealthy and delicate, but you've got freckles, age spots, or an uneven complexion. What do? According to popular beauty advice of the era, you eat arsenic. Arsenic complexion wafers were actual products sold to women who wanted to achieve that coveted consumptive chic look, basically, trying to look like you were dying of tuberculosis because apparently that was attractive. The wafers contained small amounts of arsenic, which, when ingested regularly, would make your skin appear pale and translucent by literally poisoning you. The arsenic would reduce circulation and cause anemia, giving you that ghostly pale appearance everyone was after. But wait, there's more. If you really wanted to commit to beauty, you'd also use lead-based face powder and paint. Lead makeup had been popular since ancient Rome, and the Victorians kept the tradition alive. You'd coat your face in white lead paste to cover any imperfections. The lead would eat away at your skin, causing lesions and scarring, which you'd then cover with more lead makeup. It was a vicious cycle of poisoning yourself to hide the damage from poisoning yourself. And for that extra touch of beauty, you'd put belladonna drops in your eyes. Belladonna, which literally means beautiful woman in Italian, is also known as deadly nightshade. Putting it in your eyes would dilate your pupils, giving you that wide-eyed, doe-like appearance. The side effects included blurred vision, sensitivity to light, and potential blindness. But at least you looked pretty while stumbling around like a confused raccoon. These women were essentially poisoning themselves from multiple angles simultaneously. Arsenic from the inside, lead on the outside, and nightshade in the eyes. The result? Pale, smooth skin, huge eyes, and a drastically shortened lifespan. Many women died from heavy metal poisoning, their bodies riddled with arsenic and lead. Others went blind or developed severe neurological problems. But for a brief, toxic moment, they looked absolutely stunning. The phrase beauty is pain doesn't quite cover it. This was beauty is slow-acting poison. Now let's talk about a fear that kept people up at night, literally. You're living in the 18th or 19th century, and you have a very reasonable fear, being buried alive. This wasn't an irrational paranoia. People actually were sometimes buried alive due to misdiagnosed death, especially during epidemics when bodies needed to be disposed of quickly. You might fall into a coma, be declared dead, and wake up 6 feet underground in a coffin. So society developed some solutions, and they range from clever to absolutely nightmare-inducing. The first solution was the safety coffin, which sounds nice until you realize what it means. These coffins were equipped with bells, flags, or breathing tubes that extended above ground. If you woke up buried, you could ring the bell or wave the flag, and hopefully someone would hear you and dig you up. This is where the phrase, "saved by the bell," supposedly comes from, though that's probably a myth. The problem? Most cemeteries didn't have anyone watching for the bells. You'd wake up buried, ring frantically, and still die alone in the dark because the night watchman was on a break. But the really dark solution was the waiting mortuary. In Germany and other parts of Europe, they built special facilities where corpses would be kept for days or even weeks before burial. The bodies would be laid out in rows, each one connected to a bell system. If you woke up, you could move and trigger the bell. Attendants would supposedly monitor the bodies 24/7. In reality, these became rooms full of decomposing corpses, attracting rats and disease, all because people were too terrified of premature burial to just get on with it. Even darker was the practice of corpse proving, where they do extreme tests to make sure you were really dead. Some methods included sticking needles under your fingernails, putting hot coals on your feet, or having someone scream directly into your ear. In some places, they'd cut your finger or toe to see if you bled. If you were actually alive but in a deep coma, congratulations, you'd wake up to someone torturing you. If you were actually dead, well, at least they were thorough. The French had perhaps the most disturbing test. They'd stick a sharp instrument up your nose and into your brain. If you didn't react, you were definitely dead. Or you were paralyzed and screaming internally. One physician suggested pouring boiling water over the corpse. Another recommended putting leeches on the body's anus. And these were considered respectable medical opinions. The simple problem was, we need to make sure people are dead before we bury them. The proportional response would have been, check for a pulse and breathing. The actual historical solution was, let's torture the corpse just to be safe. They solved the problem of premature burial by creating new problems of corpse abuse and public health hazards. Finally, let's discuss the medical solution to literally everything. You're living any time from ancient Greece up through the 1800s, and you have a medical problem. Any medical problem. Headache, fever, depression, indigestion, constipation, tuberculosis, broken leg, pregnancy complications, mental illness. Doesn't matter what it is, the answer is bloodletting. Just slice open a vein and drain out some blood. That'll fix it. Probably. The theory behind bloodletting was based on the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you were sick, it meant your humors were out of balance, and since blood was the easiest humor to remove, doctors would just drain some out until you felt better. Or until you passed out. Whichever came first. The procedure was simple. The doctor would make an incision in your arm or apply leeches to suck out your blood. How much blood? That depended on the condition and the doctor's mood. Some physicians would drain multiple pints at a time. They'd collect the blood in bowls and examine it like they were reading tea leaves, trying to determine if they'd removed the bad blood yet. The sicker you were, the more blood they'd take, which obviously made you sicker. George Washington, the first president of the United States, probably died from bloodletting. He had a throat infection, and his doctors drained about half of his total blood volume over the course of a day. Shockingly, removing 5 pints of blood from a sick 7-year-old man did not cure his throat infection. Instead, he died from hypovolemic shock, basically. He ran out of blood. The treatment killed him faster than the disease would have. But bloodletting wasn't reserved for the dying. It was used for everything. Feeling sad? Bloodletting. Angry? Bloodletting. Women's menstrual problems? Obviously, more bloodletting. The logic was circular and insane. You're sick, so we'll drain your blood. Now you're weak from blood loss, which proves you were very sick, so we should drain more blood. Now you're dying, but at least we tried. Leeches became a massive industry. In the early 1800s, France was importing 40 million leeches per year. 40 million blood-sucking worms, all deployed to cure people by making them anemic. Some leeches were used once and thrown away. Others were squeezed like toothpaste tubes to make them regurgitate the blood so they could be reused. Delightful. The practice finally died out in the late 1800s when germ theory emerged and doctors realized that maybe, just maybe, draining people's blood wasn't actually curing infections. Crazy thought. Modern medicine occasionally uses leeches and limited bloodletting for very specific conditions, but we've mostly moved past drain blood to cure everything. So there you have it. 5 simple problems that history solved in the most disturbing ways possible. Crying baby? Drug them with morphine. Headache? Drill a hole in their skull. Want pale skin? Poison yourself with arsenic and lead. Afraid of being buried alive? Torture every corpse just to be sure. Literally any illness? Remove blood until the patient either recovers or dies. The common thread here is that people took reasonable concerns and responded with absolutely unhinged solutions because they didn't understand biology, medicine, or basic cause and effect. We've learned a lot since then. Now, when we have simple problems, we solve them with modern, sensible solutions. Like scrolling through social media until we forget what the problem was. Which historical solution disturbed you the most? The baby morphine? The skull drilling? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Dr. Hollowstone, and I am really smart. Until next time, farewell.